NewLeaf has its terms and conditions, Flair has its terms and conditions, and I checked and my cursory search did not reveal any provision in anywhere there would allow either NewLeaf or Flair to unilaterally cancel all these flights unless there is a force majeure or unless there is a weather issue.
Hi, Gabby. Thanks a lot for doing this interview with me. So I guess we are talking New Leaf again. So can you explain to the viewers what happened today?
Today, NewLeaf announced the cancellation of all its southbound, US-bound flights to US sun destinations. In the east side, it would be Melbourne Orlando Airport, and from central Canada, it would be to Phoenix, Arizona. According to my rough estimates, we are talking about 150 flight segments that have been canceled in one day. So that over a period of 15 weeks or 3.5 months. The calculation works as follows. NewLeaf was planning to operate those flights from 15th of January until the 30th of April. That's 105 days or 15 weeks. They were planning to operate 3 weekly flights from Calgary to Phoenix, Arizona, 1 weekly flight from Edmonton to Phoenix, Arizona, and they were also planning to operate, as I understand, 1 weekly flight from Hamilton to Melbourne, Orlando Airport. So that gives us 5 flights in return, if my calculation is correct. That means 10 segments per week, 10 times 15 weeks, that's about 150 weeks. That's a rough calculation. I don't know how many passengers are affected. I don't know how many passengers held reservations of those flights. Perhaps just so few that it looked like more economic to cancel those flights. Those things we don't know.
What are the steps that passengers have their flights canceled can take? What kind of recourse? I've seen comments left on Facebook page of New Leaf that announced this, and some people are saying basically resigning and saying, hey, well, you pay what you get for, you pay the lowest fare, and you shouldn't expect anything of a cheap carrier.
They're just wrong. That's not how it works. NewLeaf has its terms and conditions, Flair has its terms and conditions, and I checked and my cursory search did not reveal any provision in anywhere there would allow either NewLeaf or Flair to unilaterally cancel all these flights unless there is a force majeure or unless there is a weather issue, something completely out of their control. Just because they don't like competing with another company, which may be doing a business better than they do, that doesn't entitle them to cancel the flights. So in my understanding, NewLeaf and Flair, jointly or separately, that's to be decided by a court, but still on the hook for the damages, for the expenses that passengers incur. Those expenses are foreseeable. You don't expect people to just go to Arizona and sleep at the airport. People will be booking a hotel. People will be booking a car. Many of those expenses are non-refundable. So passengers will have some form of recourse, which I'm going to discuss in a moment, against one or both of Flair and NewLeaf.
And that's, as a basic, includes buying a ticket from a different airline and the differences between the costs, right?
Which is one of the things. So the very first step I would take if I were in the shoes of a passenger whose flight was canceled is phone Flair. Flair Airlines is the operator of the flight. They are the licensed carrier, and simply ask them on the phone, will you honor my ticket? Yes or no?
So this is the key, right? In one of our previous interviews, this point become very clear, and that it is decided by the Canadian Federal Court of Appeal, right? So the one that is on the hook is Flair Airline, the licensed air carrier, not NewLeaf.
Yes, unless somehow Flair is able to show that NewLeaf was selling those tickets without its consent or something of that nature. But I would first ask Flair, are you going to honor the ticket? If Flair says yes, well, then they will have to still operate the flight. I doubt that they're going to say yes, though. they're probably going to say no. And then one of the things to do is to document it. So I do recommend passengers to phone Flair. Flair's phone number is public. Record a call, that's legal, and make sure that they get a clear answer from Flair that they will not be honoring the ticket. Or if they just mumble, that's also good, but have a clear documentation of that. At that point, the passenger has two courses of action. Either they go and buy a ticket from another airline, like WestJet, possibly for a higher price, but for the same period, same time, and then seek reimbursement for the difference. Or if they decide to cancel, they may have hotel cancellation and car cancellation and trip cancellation, various fees, and then they incur those expenses. Generally, passengers are expected to mitigate damages, so you cannot rebook yourself on a business class ticket with Air Canada if an economy class is still available for the same dates. The judge would likely also look at the aspect of how much money is reasonable to spend on the tickets if the cost of flying out on another airline is substantially higher than the cancellation cost. A judge might unfortunately say that it would have been more reasonable for you to cancel, not necessarily though. You do have, in generally, if they sold you a ticket, you have the right to transportation. They cannot just say that we are giving you a refund and walking away from the contract. I couldn't find any provision in NewLeaf's website that would allow them to simply walk away from the obligation to transport passengers by giving you a refund. And my recollection is that the Canadian Transportation Agency had similar rulings back in 2012. An airline cannot just walk away from the obligation to transport passengers by issuing a refund. So the next step would be, perhaps before you had to buy a ticket with another airline, to send a demand both to NewLeaf and to Flair that they purchase you another ticket on another airline and give them a reasonable amount of time depending on when your travel is. If your travel is next week, then 24, 48 hours. If your travel is in 2 months, then maybe give them a week to respond and advise them that if they don't respond, you will be taking the following steps and you will be looking at them to compensate you for it. And once you have incurred all the expenses that you expect to incur, you send them a demand, again, both to Flair and NewLeaf, just to be on the safe side, demanding full reimbursement of your expenses in excess of what you paid for the ticket to NewLeaf, and give them 14 days to reimburse you. If they don't respond, file a small claim against both of them. Just a good measure to ensure that they are not able to point at each other. What I would also hope to see, because of how many passengers are affected, is that a law firm specializing in class actions would take the case and commence a class action against both of them, both NewLeaf and Flair. Because overall, this is something so wrong to leave passengers hanging this way, that this is of the type and nature of cases that would beg for a class action, to make sure that this does not happen again for the next 25 years. And I have many concrete cases, like today I spent a number of hours with passengers stuck in Singapore,
Right.
helping them to get back to Canada. So my priority is the most burning situations, people who right now, here and now, need help. And as much as I would love to help everybody, I am most inclined to help those passengers who are themselves very determined to fight and take the case to small claims courts.
Right.
Because that is really the way to assert your rights. And if airlines know that they cannot get away because they will have to face possibly 100 small claims, they will have to change their attitudes. And in this case, if passengers let NewLeaf and Flair get away with it without taking any small claims, then they are in some way responsible, the passengers themselves, to perpetuating the culture that this kind of behavior is acceptable in Canada. And I hope that more and more people will speak up, speak out, and will stand up for their rights, because what happened here was wrong. An airline can cancel its flights, but it doesn't mean that the airline is not on the hook for all the expenses and consequences for the cancellation. We're not talking here about a delay. This is a case of a complete non-performance. And I would very much hope that more and more passengers will hold NewLeaf and Flair accountable for this. This is obviously a nonsense what NewLeaf and Flair are trying to do. A refund that passengers
And that's
get.
the official media line. Right? I think they explain
Yes,
it
but
to
see, a
Global.
refund that passengers get will not buy them a ticket on another airline. That's really the root of the problem. So, if the amount of the refund was sufficient to buy a WestJet ticket, no problem. Passengers buy a WestJet ticket, fine. But it is not. And if it is not enough to buy a WestJet ticket, it means that Flair and NewLeaf will likely be liable for this cancellation. I couldn't find anything in the contract that would allow them to arbitrarily cancel all flights just because commercially they don't think that it's viable. They cannot just walk away from a contract. If if that is what something they can do, then the contract is illusory. Then there is no actual commitment to perform. I mean, then what is the passengers bought? A maybe flight, a standby seat, a potential flight. That's not how things work. They bought a confirmed booking. They were promised transportation. That transportation is not going to materialize. So those who made a contract have very significant liabilities. And that's something both for Flair and NewLeaf to consider. And if they think that they can walk away from it and they can just tell people no, it won't compensate you, they are dead wrong. I very much encourage passengers to look into their rights, to educate themselves about their rights. And in my uneducated view, of course, I'm not a lawyer, I do think that there is a liability here for NewLeaf and Flair, and that passengers should be pursuing those two companies for their extra expenses.
Right. Okay, so I put it out there. Actual passengers affected for all the cancellation in the U.S. and whatnot get NewLeaf or Flair to do the right thing. You are totally willing to help them, like
Oh, absolutely,
you did
absolutely.
with the couple stuck in Singapore.
Exactly. I did it with a couple stuck in Singapore. I'm doing this way with couples who were bumped by WestJet. I have played no favors with airlines. If an airline behaves itself, I'm happy to give them credit for doing the right thing. If they don't, I will not play favors. I play no favorites, and I will help any passenger who has been wronged by an airline to enforce her or his rights.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Gary.
Thank you very much for having me.